So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my brief history with this company so that to give you some context for what teamwork is all about with a company like ours. We are a small distillery based in Virginia in the USA, and we started the company. We is my wife, Rebecca, and myself. So we started the company as a husband-wife team. So we started with a team of two. And they say, of course, marriage is a type of teamwork. It takes teamwork to make a marriage survive. It's always work, all of these things that you hear. And it's very true. What makes marriage even more difficult is then to go into business together. So we had some early experience with that. And then, of course, growing to where we have employees, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the way our company came about, let me start at the very beginning. More than 10 years ago, about 12 years ago, I was in my midst of my career as a government contractor. So I live very close to Washington, D.C., and I'm an engineer. So I work on computers all day, and I worked for the U.S. Navy. And so we would work on these contracts for the U.S. Navy. And when you're working for a contract, you're bidding to try to win a contract from a government, and it might be a very large contract, $1 billion contract to put equipment on a U.S. Navy airplane. And you have a small piece of this. And the process for this is that you go, usually contracts are released in America just before what we call Thanksgiving, which is, of course, our big November holiday. And then they're due on January 4th, which is after the New Year. And the government loves to do this because they will issue the contract and then they go on vacation from Thanksgiving all the way through Christmas until the New Year. It's very nice for them. For us, it's terrible. So we get to go live in a hotel in a foreign city like Denver during the holidays without our children, without our family, and we're sitting working 12-hour days every day, 7 days a week. It's very, very difficult. And so you do this once, you do this twice, you do this the third time, and you begin to wonder if you'll ever see your children for Christmas again. And then if you win the contract, hooray, it was all worth the effort. But then if you lose the contract, why am I still doing this? So I'm having this kind of existential crisis in my life. And eventually I decide I can't do this anymore. I can't sit behind a desk. If I was to construct for myself the perfect version of hell, it would be me sitting behind a desk like this for the rest of my life. And so I said, I got to get out of here. So luckily, 20 years of working for the government taught me a great love of whiskey. And my wife, Becky, is a chemical engineer. So I brought to her the idea that said, look, you're a chemical engineer. You would make a very good distiller. I need you to make whiskey so that we can start a distillery. And normally the answer would be, are you effing crazy? But my wife is not a normal wife. My wife said, of course I would make a good distiller. Making whiskey is easy. But can you make money making whiskey? And this is the hard part, right? So this was the first teamwork we have, is her challenging me, like, yes, I can see your whiskey, but you need to figure out the business plan. And so she told me to write a business plan and to take it to the bank and to see if I could get some money from a bank for a loan for the business. Well, I'll remind you, this is now 2009, and you all look very young, but if you remember 2009, it was in America we were having the crisis of the recession, right? The stock market was collapsing. We had the words too big to fail in America. Banks were too big to fail, so the government is bailing them out with money. Everything is going down very fast and very bad. And Becky knew for certain the bank would say no, and then she would have been very supportive, very loving wife, and then, okay, now you need to get back to your job because you have some children here who are going to need to go to university. So we took the business plan to the bank, and this is the part that surprised us. The bank said yes. The bank says, here is $250,000, go start your business. And we had no experience. We had only 30 pages of paper which said we were going to start a distillery. Nobody had ever done it before in our area. The bank didn't even know what a distillery was. And yet they said, here's some money, go do it. And so we were like, holy shit, now we have to do it. We have the money in the hand. And so we started this business with two people. At the time, I would continuing to work in the government job, and my wife would work 12-hour days in the distillery, making the whiskey all by herself. And so this was our team. At home, I would come in the evening, and I would do the business plan and do marketing and talk to distributors. And during the day, she would make whiskey, all of that. So that's how we started 10 years ago. And today, We are in 26 states in the United States, so about half of the country. We distribute in 4 countries here in the EU, so Holland, Germany, Finland, and Italy. And I think, we're still working very, very hard, and we're still trying to grow our brand, but I think we're coming, pretty far along. So let me get into the presentation then. So this is just a little bit about us. As I mentioned, started in 2009. We produce rye whiskey. Rye whiskey is Virginia's native spirit. So if you were living in Virginia at the time of George Washington, 1700, 1800, you were drinking rye whiskey. And nobody, even in Virginia, knew that when we started. It was our purpose to teach people what their native spirit was in our home country, in our home state. All of our whiskey is single barrel and pot stilled, as it was back then. And as I mentioned, now we have a small company of 20 employees producing about 45,000 liters, so still very, very small production level. So in the early days, management was easy, just husband and wife. Well, as easy as husband and wife can be. Sometimes, at the very first year that we started, we had our first major argument about something, and I thought to myself, with a real panic, I thought, oh my gosh, in going into business with my wife, I have now ruined my marriage. So this teamwork was something that we needed to work out, and we did, and we continue to work on it. As we grew, though, we started adding employees and increasing our organizational complexity. So every time you add another employee, there's 2 more connections, 3 more connections, 4 more connections as you add each employee, and the interaction of all those employees together becomes quite complex. So morale is very important. So we want to provide a fun, team-oriented environment while we demand absolute perfection from our employees. We have to give the employees the big picture. Sometimes you get lost in the details of the working day and all of the things you must do, and you forget to take time to come back and say all the big successes that we have as a company, which people really want to know and really motivates them to continue to do a good job. For our part, we also gave employees equity, so that means a share of the company ownership. And this is very important because it provides a motivation for that employee. Now they are motivated by the same things you're motivated by. Everybody's an owner. And that's very, it's a very generous thing to do, but it also is selfish in that we want to have everybody on the same page marching towards the same goals. For key employees, I read once that we have to always overpay the key employees. You don't want your best distiller or your best general manager to be stolen by your competition. And so this is important. We also have excellent, beyond the norm for our field, excellent benefits. So in America, we are offering retirement savings plans and health insurance and all of these kinds of things, which are very, very costly, but also very important to motivate and retain employees. In our business, it was never easy to find somebody who already had experience doing what we're doing. Nobody is doing at home what we're doing. So I can find people and teach them how to make whiskey, but I can't teach somebody to be a good leader, to be honest, to be hardworking, to come on work on time. Those kinds of things are more important. So we hired people that we knew had technical skills. For instance, I hired our main distiller now that helps Becky is an auto mechanic. I know he knows how to fix things. He's reliable. He can do things. He's been to school. And we taught him how to make whiskey. I will say sometimes we have problems. We have bad employees, and poor behavior must be addressed. The biggest part that we struggle with is not having different, now that we have 20 people, different departments having different cliques developing. So we can't have people that work in the tasting room saying, well, it's not my job, I won't help because we have a disaster in the distillery and we have to clean something up. Everybody works, everybody does every job. And we live by example. We never want to hear, not my job. Everybody's job is making the company successful. We often have to, not often, but sometimes we have to terminate an employee because they have bad behavior, theft or gossip or something. And usually I'm very reluctant to do this. And then after the termination has happened, I usually find out so much more that comes out from the employees that everybody knew was a problem that I didn't know about that validates my decision. And it's often difficult to get that kind of honest information before a termination happens. So some tools. We believe in America, in our company at least, in the chain of command. So it's somewhat of a military concept. If you're a private, you talk to the sergeant. If you're a sergeant, then you talk to the captain. If you're a captain, you talk to the colonel. But the private never talks to the colonel. We do this somewhat because that's a way to honor the leadership of the people. So if I have a manager working the tasting room and one of the people comes to me with a problem, I say, have you spoken to the manager? Have you spoken to Denise? Because she can address your problem. What we don't want to happen is that people look at Becky and I as the founders as mom and dad. Don't come to mom and dad with all your problems. If you have a problem, you talk to your manager first. If your manager can't help you, then I'm happy to talk to you. But don't come just complaining to mom and dad. And if we were to address the problems, we're undermining our manager's ability to be authoritative. We always document bad behavior, always written. Nothing in America can be done unless there's written evidence of problems. Otherwise, you're very likely to get some kind of an employee lawsuit or something like that. And never should somebody, if you do terminate them, should it ever say, but I thought I was doing a good job. Always there has been a discussion beforehand. Nobody's ever terminated on the spot, unless it's a flagrant problem like theft or abuse or something like this, which we've never had to do. Sometimes people leave. They move to a new city. They get married. They move away, something like that. So we always make sure people are cross-trained. Many people can do many jobs. And building these healthy, good relationships. Even once they leave, many of our employees who have left are now ambassadors for our company, and they work with us, or they come and see us, and we have drinks, and we want to keep a good relationship whenever possible. I always say this, it's very difficult to put in practice sometimes, but the main strength of our company is not how good our liquor is, or how much business we have in certain places, but it's our people. If everybody left my company tomorrow, our business is over. So our people are the strength of our company. And so you have to cherish them, really cherish them, not just take advantage of them, but cherish them and help them to grow so that you can grow as well. And so that's my talk about growing our company. Thank you.